Hello, welcome to Business Reporter's Best of British Business campaign. I'm Ashley Blake. Pensions have always been a tightly regulated industry. However, a new wave of legislation, as well as mounting expectations from society, are set to increase trustees' responsibilities even further. New risks of sanctions, criminal sanctions even, an ever more litigious environment, as well as the need to reconcile the return of investments with environmental sustainability. All these challenges means that the job of pension trustees is getting harder and harder. Today we're talking to two experts from Pi Partnership about the steps trustees and sponsors need to take in order to run their pension schemes effectively and compliantly. Sarah, Amanda, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so you're the leading experts in pension scheme management. Just take us through some of the challenges that managers and trustees are facing at the moment.
I think it's probably fair to say that there's never been a more challenging time to be a pension scheme trustee. Quite rightly, pension schemes have always been subject to lots of rules and regulations, as you'd expect. We're responsible for paying the right benefits, to millions of people in pensions. And of course, we also manage billions of assets. So there's always been a lot of pension legislation. However, right now, we've got a combination of factors that are happening that are making this particular time really challenging. And they are compliance with the legislation. Yes, there's always been legislation, but we've got a raft of new legislation coming through in terms from the pensions regulator that's covering a wide range of issues. And for the very first time, some of that legislation is being backed up by criminal sanctions, both on trustees and on company directors. Linked into that, we've got member expectations have never been as high from their pension schemes. So since 2016, with the advent of pension scheme freedoms, members now have far more choice. With more choice becomes the need to have more information. With more information comes the possibility of more risk. And therefore, trustees have really got to be able to adapt to what members now require.
Nice.
And then finally, and by no means least, obviously, is we've got the demands on climate change coming through. I've already said pension schemes manage billions of assets, so they're really well placed as trustees to make a real difference. But implementing all the climate change requirements into investment portfolios without impacting on investment returns is going to be difficult. So you've got that combination of those three things coming through, which is just making at the moment such a difficult time for pension trustees.
I see. Sounds like an absolute minefield that you have to tiptoe through. Perhaps you could go into a little bit more detail of where the pitfalls can lay.
There are many pitfalls, and increasingly so. And I think just picking up with the three particular challenges we've got at the moment that Amanda mentioned. If we look at legislation, we've always been subject to lots of legislation from the time that pensions first began, but it's becoming more complex. Every year, year on year, becoming more complex. And it's not only legislation, we've also got an increasing reach of the pensions regulator, its codes of practice, its guidance, increasing need to notify the regulator of particular things. Sales of company businesses have to be notified. Creating security has to be notified. It's just an increasing amount of responsibility, both for trustees and employers. We had first from 2016, we had freedom and choice. Gives members lots more flexibility about how they take their benefits. Because there's more flexibility, they need more information. Trustees have to make sure they really manage that information carefully so that members can really make an informed choice.
Right.
And if that wasn't enough, we also have lots now of scam activity, and we have to look after the members and go through the processes to make sure that they are protected as far as we can from that kind of activity. If you were to sum that up, we are saying that Although trustees have always had the obligation to pay the right benefits to the right people at the right time, trustees' heads are now much higher above the parapet than they ever were. And I might say a professional trustee's head is even higher than that. And it's not just trustees, because there are reputational issues for employers if things go wrong.
Of course, so perhaps you could give us some tips of how we deal with these challenges.
Any of the challenges we've discussed, whether it's increasing legislation, whether it's managing member expectations, or indeed the challenges that are going to come through in dealing with climate change through investment portfolios. There's probably one big tip we would say across all of them, and that is these days, as trustees or indeed pension scheme managers, you have to have the right processes in place.
Right.
You have to make sure those processes are reviewed and are adequate. You then have to follow the processes. And I would say these days, the really big changes, you've really got to be able to demonstrate that you have followed those processes. And you can take that through into sort of various examples. So if we were talking about legislation and the increasing burden of compliance, then, as we've said, there's always been rules and regulations. You've always had to have deadlines. You've always had to submit certain levels of documentation. Where this has really developed, I think, is in data management. Pension schemes manage a lot of data. And as you can imagine, data is very high on many agendas at the moment. So bringing in the processes and understanding your risks in that area is going to be crucial for trustees. We're all working under budget constraints.
Right.
So my top tip really, when you're looking at all the extra legislation coming through, is understand your key risks as a pension scheme. And then you can use your budget to manage those risks that are most important to you. In terms of member expectations, there's an increasing need to communicate well with members. This is difficult. Pension schemes are complicated. As an industry, we love our jargon. We have an extensive amount of it. And again, our tip probably around that is understand your members. Are they pensioners? Are they approaching retirement to make a decision? Are they just starting to invest in pensions and they're having to manage that alongside mortgages and student loans? What is the area that's going to be of most value to them? And use your budget and use your communication to those members to focus on what will really add value and make a difference.
And in addition, when we're looking at investment issues, again, really important to understand what are those investments. Many years ago, investments used to be pretty much a binary choice between what percentage of assets you put into UK equities on the one hand and what percentage you put into UK government bonds. It was as simple as that. These days, even for the smallest of schemes, investment vehicles are much more complex. Trustees need to understand those, to understand what risks they're taking.
I see. So tell us about Pi Partnership. What's the benefit that you bring to the table?
Well, Pi Partnership started 21 years ago, and we started very much with an ethos to provide high quality, professional and independent advice. And although we have grown significantly over the last 21 years, that absolutely remains central to our ethos.
Within our trustee team, we have a number of people from a wide range of different backgrounds, some legal, some actuarial, some covenant assessment, investment, and also HR. So we've got a large number of different skill sets that we can bring to bear within this independent trustee provision.
I see. So if I've got a pension scheme, how do you help me get a grip of it?
Depends a little bit then on what the pension scheme needs are. I mean, Sarah's has mentioned obviously our trustee team, but within Pi Partnership, we also, as well as providing independent professional trustees, we also support a wide range of schemes through pension scheme management, and indeed work with trustees and companies to identify different needs within that. So, for example, some of the recent type of work that we've been involved in might be helping those trustees put in place a suitable system of governance and processes that we alluded to earlier. It might be making sure they've got the right advisors in place. So one of the benefits I said about Pi was that we were independent. We're independent in terms of the fact that we don't offer a number of the services offered by some of the other advisors, such as actuarial, covenant, investment consultancy and administration. So that enables us to work with a wide range of advisors free of any conflicts of interest,
right.
And with no commercial sensitivities. So we can help pension schemes put in place the right advisors. And as we've already said, there's a lot of complex legislation. So getting that right advice has never been more important. Working on from that, it can be, let's work with the trustee board. Now that might be that they would need to appoint us as a professional trustee, but equally it might be that we need to look at how trustee boards work together. I mean, does a trustee board become more than the sum of its parts? How do you bring very high on the agenda? How do you bring in diversity? Into what is a very traditional industry. So how do you get trustee boards to reflect their membership? How do we help diversity make informed decision making? And those are the types of areas that we are often engaged by our clients to come and help them in those areas.
I see. Right. So if you forward, let's say, 10 years, what's the key development or trend that every pension scheme trustee board should have?
So I would say some of the older, probably more traditional type of schemes we've got are very much going to be on the track to transferring their risk to insurance companies or other vehicles. So keeping an eye on developments in that market and always being able to transact at a timely point is going to be key for trustee boards there. And indeed that's one of the big areas that we get involved in, whether we're supporting them as project managers, where maybe we're making sure schemes are up to date, in looking at those different areas and getting their ducks in a row. Some of the more modern, newer style schemes, that's going to be very much in the forefront of member communication, I think. We've got lots more ways that we can communicate with members. Pension schemes are in a real leader position here to be able to make meaningful change. And I think how we implement that through the pensions industry actually makes this quite an exciting time for pension schemes.
Excellent. Amanda, Sarah from Pi Partnership,